Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Paul, and in this RedGamingTech.com video, we're going to be discussing as well as analysing tech news which, as usual, has popped up in the past 24 or so hours. Hopefully you're having an amazing day. We have a ton of stuff to get through in today's video. Honestly, normally I would split this into two videos because there's so much to discuss, but in a couple of hours I will be recording the podcast which will be featuring Intel Graphics Bob Duffy as well as Matt Hargett, who is a former PlayStation 5 engineer. He's now working at Roblox. Again, just a quick reminder, we will not be discussing products from their specific companies because of NDAs. However, it's going to be an informal chat and we're going to go through a ton of stuff. One of the subjects we want to actually tackle would be something like nanite, and Bob in particular is really excited about that, given essentially its access to basically almost unlimited amounts of data. It's going to be really cool to go through, so I'm really looking forward to chatting with those guys, and that's why only one video today, unfortunately. But let's get on with the stuffs, anywho. First things first is AMD's Dimgrey Cavefish. I'm just going to give that name a second to sink in. But, yeah, it's supposedly Navi 23. This has been discovered by Kamachi Insanka on Twitter. And this reference is actually in Mesa 20.3 DEVEL. Now, this is not the first fishy name we've heard from AMD. It's joined by Sienna Cichlid and Navi Flounder, which are thought to be Navi 21 and 22 respectively. We've discussed recently a ton of stuff for RDNA 2 and a lot of leaks that I've had, so I won't go over them again in this video. You can check out yesterday's video where I went over some leaked specifications of a couple of different cards, and you can also check out one of my exclusives where I, go through tons of leaked information about the performance targets and that type of stuff with the GPUs. But long story short here, 23 is thought to be bringing up the rear, so it's obviously going to be the lower end SKUs, whereas 21 is going to be the highest end, with 21 seeming to pack 80 compute units. We don't know how many 23, however, is going to feature. Honestly, from what I'm hearing from my sources, the higher end SKUs, like the RX 6800 series, that appears to be the focus right now from AMD, because obviously they really want to counter the higher end cards which have been released from Nvidia, such as the RTX 3080. And I think they're going to do a tremendous job with this. The question is, of course, how well will they compete in a plethora of different tasks? Because it's not just traditional rasterization we need to worry about anymore. It's things like hardware-based ray tracing. It's things such as upsampling with like DLSS. I am hearing that AMD does have upsampling, but maybe it's not as good quality as Nvidia. Ray tracing, well, who the hell knows at this point. I think, honestly, though, this generation of GPUs is going to be really cool. AMD will be formally announcing the RX 6000 series on the 28th of October, so it's not too long into the future at all. And by that point, we'll also have a really good understanding of what they're going to be doing with Zen 3 as well. And while we're on the subject of AMD, I want to quickly discuss Rembrandt, which is an APU, it appears, based on the Zen 3 architecture and on the 6nm process. It supports both low-power DDR5 as well as DDR5 as well, and is utilizing the RDNA 2 architecture. This has actually been a joint leak. The first mention of it, at least to my knowledge, was from a Twitter user, Mebwu, hopefully I've pronounced that correctly, MEBIUW, but this was also then confirmed by Patrick Sker on Twitter. So what we have here essentially is both of them confirming basically the same thing. We have no performance targets or performance information about this particular APU. However, given the fact that it is using RDNA 2 as the architecture, we can at least expect quite a big jump in graphics performance, and this is particularly given the fact it's using R5 technology for memory, which obviously has significantly more memory bandwidth. This has several benefits for the CPU as well, but on the GPU, memory bandwidth with DDR4 is obviously always kind of, let's use the word limiting. So being able to have more memory bandwidth available for the RDNA 2 cores, you can expect quite a significant uptick in performance. It's very likely, though, that this particular architecture is not going to be the 5000 series, because from what we understand so far, I'm hearing it from a couple of my sources, plus as well, there have been other leaks online. Both Vermeer and Cezanne are going to be the Ryzen 5000 series, with Cezanne, of course, being the APUs and Vermeer being the desktop CPUs. Therefore, logically, Rembrandt would be the 6000 series, and again, according to what both of these individuals have said, the chip itself is going to support DDR5, but it can be up to 5200 megahertz, which is pretty damn nippy, and this is also joined lovingly by up to 20 PCIe 4.0 lanes, and this also potentially would be on a new APU socket, as well as desktop socket. From what I understand, this is called AM5 for the desktop. Obviously, it's a successor to AM4, and this particular desktop platform will also support, as you can probably guess by now, DDR5 as well. We will continue the topic with Nvidia, as there is actually pretty much confirmation at this point, as if we needed further confirmation, that the RTX 3080 20GB and 3070 Super/TI/ whatever you want to call it does exist. And this has been an internal roadmap presentation which has actually confirmed this from Galax. So basically it's leaked and an oopsie has been done. I honestly kind of expect this to be an accidental oops, as in it was actually accidentally on purpose. There's not a huge amount to say about this other than the 3080 20GB is basically positioned between the 10 and the 3080 10GB and the 3090. There are still prevailing rumours that there is a difference in core configuration, but there is no evidence of it. So I would probably just take it as it's the same. There is no difference in performance other than the amount of RAM. There is also no information at the moment as to the MSRP of this particular GPU. And as for the 3070 Super/TI/whatever the hell you want to call it, it does have 16GB of memory, and allegedly too will feature the full GA104 die. So it's going to be an interesting lineup that Nvidia have prepared. There's also confirmation here, although frankly this is not even really worth mentioning because it's like, well, duh. And that is that there's an RTX 3060. There is no information at the moment officially as to the performance. However, there have been several leaks, and this particular SKU is said to have 4864 CUDA cores. And again, it will have a cut in memory, so it's only going to have 8GB of GDDR6. It's still a pretty big upgrade, though, over the RTX 2060, but it's not more than what we saw with the RTX 2060 Super, because that was using TU104, and therefore had access to 8GB of memories. And now we're going to shift our focus on to gaming-related news, because at this point there is just so bloody much gaming-related news. The first is Starfield may actually be an Xbox/PC exclusive. As you are probably aware at this point, Microsoft basically, shocked the world and dropped $7.5 billion and purchased Zenimax. And now there are rumours, thanks to Jez Gordon, who is a chap from Windows Central, and the rumour is that yes, Starfield is going to be an Xbox Series X/Series S exclusive, but that's for a console exclusive, so it will also naturally come to the PC as well. Obviously, at the end of the day, this is not official information, but with this said, Microsoft have just recently made a statement that games will be released on other platforms on essentially a game-by-game basis. We actually covered that on the channel, and I mean, if I'm Microsoft, I wouldn't give the PlayStation 5 Starfield at least on launch, maybe a year afterwards, but certainly not on launch. Now, whether this is true, I don't know, but it's also quite difficult to know because Zenimax and the subsidiaries of Zenimax have been apparently told by Microsoft that they can largely work independently. So, yeah, it's still really up in the air at the moment. Personally, I would say that it's unlikely that Starfield and Elder Scrolls 6 will appear on the PlayStation 5, or maybe it'll be a delayed release. But again, until there's confirmation of it from one of the studios, nothing's official. But wait, there's more, as the saying goes. Satya Nadella, who is obviously Microsoft's big head honcho, has definitely confirmed that there will be more acquisitions that Microsoft will be making for games studios/publishers. And this is a quote from Satya. "You can't wake up and say, let me build a game studio. The idea of having content we can reach larger communities. We'll always look for places where there are commonality of purpose, mission, and culture. And we will always look to grow inorganically where it makes sense." And again, there are other hints too that, we will actually see more acquisitions. But currently, as of the time I'm recording this, the internet believes it's Sega which is going to be purchased. So here's the thing. Microsoft purchasing Sega is not a new rumour. It was actually earlier this year, I believe, that there were a series of reports that Sega were going to be acquired by Microsoft. Furthermore, the CEO of Sega, back in late July, I believe it was, left the company. But, so far, nothing has been announced. But now there have been a few very interesting hints on social media. One actually is from the official Sega Twitter. This is the Japanese account. And you can see yourself, Sonic, just chilling, with two glasses which are obviously green, which is kind of, Xbox green, I guess you could say. Furthermore, there have been other images which have been circulating online showing a gamepad, and you can see yourself, this has been posted by Underachiever on Twitter, that the gamepad definitely looks very blue Sonic-like. In fact, another user, AC3 Tony, actually did checking of the colour, and it's an exact match to the Sega logos. But in this instance, simple and clean, the S is highlighted, and you can see the Onic of Iconic is also highlighted. So that's one example. But would Sega, however, really get purchased by Microsoft? Well, at the moment, I think we can all agree that we're living in bizarro world. There are even reports currently that Ubisoft is going to be purchased by Sony. And interestingly, I did kind of get a hint that Sony were looking to purchase a studio, but it kind of was hinted to me that that the Sony acquisition would be a Western studio. However, Ubisoft is not a small company. They are worth so much cash. And I'm not saying that Sony is broke. They could certainly afford them, technically, but it would cost them so much money. I don't know. I honestly don't know what to think about the Ubisoft purchase from Sony. But Sega, Microsoft have had this collaboration and this weird relationship with Sega for so long. Like, back when the original Xbox was kind of launching, Microsoft had actually wanted to purchase Sega, and Sega had actually wanted to be sold to Microsoft, but they couldn't come to some agreement, mostly because Microsoft weren't willing to budge in terms of the support for the Dreamcast, and it just became a whole thing. I believe it was an executive of Microsoft actually admitted that they really regretted not purchasing it, but maybe I'm making that up. I'm sure I read it somewhere. But what I do know is, let's take all of the other IPs, just for a second. Every single IP that Microsoft own, other than the Zenimax stuff. So that's, the Dooms, that's Wolfenstein, that's Evil Within, those games. Let's just ignore every other game for a second that Microsoft owns, and just focus on what would happen if they purchased Sega along with Zenimax. So the most obvious thing it gets them would be Sonic. And Sonic, I will admit, it's had some less than optimum games, but I think it's fair to say that Sonic still has a ton of staying power. Furthermore, honestly, the last few Sonic games have been really good. So that would be a big win-rah. Then you have Persona, because Sega own Atlas. You also have the Shining IPs as well. Just those two series are massive Japanese RPGs, which, honestly, Microsoft are lacking. You can then look at other games. Now, I know, because I was having discussions about this on Twitter, and a lot of folks pointed out that, well, the age of arcade is kind of dead now, so games like Golden Axe and whatever, they've lost a lot of the appeal, and I 100% agree. The thing is, though, look how popular Streets of Rage 4 was. You can make a very good argument. I'm not saying the game was free to produce, but it wasn't as expensive as the next, Doom. So Microsoft can create those experiences, have Sega create those games cheaply, in air quotes, compared to a large AAA game, and they could kind of crank those things out, like a new Streets of Rage, a new Golden Axe, a new Afterburner. You get the point. And they could kind of crank one out every 3 to 6 months. Let's say every 6 months. Let's say let's say that first half of the year, there's a, Golden Axe game. Next half of the year, there's, let's say, Afterburner. And then maybe after that, there's something else. Maybe after that, there's something else. And you could just keep going. And it would give Microsoft a really easy, well-known set of IPs, which honestly don't cost that much, but they're also fun game experiences. And you could have them last, let's say, Afterburner. It could be in half an hour, an hour's experience, and that's perfect. It's cheap. And then you can just add extra content as needed, like a couple of missions here, a couple of missions there. Done. But there's also so many other IPs that are owned by Sega. I mean, another obvious one is Virtua Fighter. Sega haven't done anything with it for so long, but then you've got a really good 3D fighting game, Virtua Fighter, and this can be kind of pushed alongside Microsoft's other fighting game, Killer Instinct. So they've got 2D and 3D fighting games locked down. And we can keep going with this all day long. Do I think it's real? I mean, I don't know. I knew that Microsoft were buying a couple of studios. I had heard that. I heard it for a long time. And if you're a regular viewer, you'll know that I've repeatedly said Microsoft is definitely buying more studios. But even me, I was like, really? When they purchased Zenimax, I never thought it was Zenimax. Amy has spotted it, like sent it to me on Facebook, and I was like, I literally read over the title like 3 times because it just did not sink in that they actually spent $7.5 billion to buy Zenimax, And what I'm actually hearing is that acquisition had been in the pipeline for ages. In fact, I even heard one person tell me that it was kind of being talked about back in the, like, even before Dishonored 2 launched. Again, this is not to say that Sega are being purchased by Xbox, but, I mean, it's definitely possible. And the other fact, too, is it could just be some kind of collaboration. So, it could be like a Sega collaboration. Maybe there'll be like a couple of exclusive games on the Xbox Series X. That would also be cool. I would also be totally okay with that. And if this is true, if Sega do get purchased, this kind of stuff is going to change gaming forever, really. It's going to be like an arms race of who can gobble up the most studios, I suppose. And I don't really know if... I just don't know how all this is going to end if it really is true. It's going to be very curious to see. And I guess, really and truly, all we can do is wait on this one. Yeah. It's like, I just don't know what to say. It's going to be very interesting if it is true. Just in terms of IPs alone, Sega is still a behemoth. So having Microsoft's money behind them would be really, really interesting. But, I mean, just imagine the world that, just for a second, that Sega was bought by Microsoft and Ubisoft was bought by Sony. That would be just... Jeez. Again, I would take this with massive grains of salt, though. Until it's officially confirmed by a company, you should always take things with salt, and this is definitely one of them. With all of that said, though, thank you very much for watching the video. The normal stuff, like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Take care of yourselves. Bye for now.